Hey, everybody, I hope you guys are healthy and safe. So you know how some people in the smartphone scene have been saying that smartphones have become very boring, that every year we're only getting minor iterative upgrades? I actually don't agree with that at all. I think people who say that are just focused on the North American phone scene, so they're just talking about Samsung and Apple. Because you look at what Chinese phones are doing, they're still competing heavily and still pushing the boundaries of what is capable with hardware. On the slap smartphone scene, Xiaomi pushed out a 1-inch sensor, and then within a few months, that 1-inch sensor made it to every other flagship Chinese phone. And then brands like Oppo and Xiaomi are also giving zoom lens and ultra-wide lens a much larger image sensor. Like on the Oppo Find X6 Pro, the ultra-wide camera on that phone has a larger image sensor than like the iPhone 13's main camera. And then on the foldable phone front, just a year ago, Xiaomi released the Mix Fold 2. This thing completely blew my mind when it was released because of how thin and light it was. I mean, even right now, a year later, it is still thinner than the Z Fold 5 by quite a bit. So this thing was freaking awesome. But then within just a few months, other Chinese brands caught up. Huawei released the Mate X3, that was even thinner than this. And then Honor released the Magic V2, which was thinner than the Huawei Mate X3. So Chinese brands are still competing, trying to one-up each other, and every few months we're getting new breakthroughs. Right now, the latest breakthrough is the Xiaomi Mix Fold 3. Now, this thing isn't that much lighter or thinner than the Mix Fold 2. I mean, it is, but so little that you're not really going to be able to tell the difference. The in-hand feels very similar. Instead, what's new with the Mix Fold 3 is that it has 2 zoom lenses now, and both of them are pretty good for a foldable phone. You have a 10 megapixel 3.2 times telephoto zoom lens that shoots at a 75mm focal length, and then you have 10 megapixel 5 times Periscope zoom lens that can shoot at a 120mm focal length. This fixes the biggest weakness of the Mix Fold 2, which was that it only had one zoom lens and 8 megapixel 2 times zoom. That was mediocre even by foldable phone standards. The Mix Fold 3 gives you focal lengths that most other foldable phones do not. You have a 6.6-inch OLED screen on the outside, LTPO Samsung E6 panel. On fold, you have an 8-inch screen on the inside, also Samsung AMOLED E6 panel, also LTPO. And the crease here is the same as the crease in the Mix Fold 2 and other Chinese foldables, in that you can still see it if you really want to look for it, but it's definitely not as deep a crease as in the Google Pixel Fold or in the Galaxy Z Fold 5. Another big improvement to the Mix Fold 3's hardware is that the hinge can now stay in place at any angle. The Mix Fold 2 could not do that. So now you actually can use this phone in tripod mode. You can put this device on a tabletop and film time-lapse or take hands-free selfies with friends. However, this phone makes the same mistake that the Oppo Find X series does, is that the selfie camera is on the wrong side of the screen. The selfie camera is on the left side, whereas the main camera system is on the right side. So that means if you have this thing in tripod mode, if you're filming in front of you, you have to sit it like this, and then if you want to take selfies, you actually then have to tilt it to sit it on the other way. It's really odd. I don't know why they can't just put the selfie camera on the same side as the main camera so you don't have to do this position shift. The Galaxy Z Fold 5 gets it right. Looking at the other cameras, you have a 50 megapixel main camera. Now, unfortunately, when Xiaomi was teasing this phone, they were advertising flagship level camera system, Leica optics. So that gave some of us hopes that this phone may be getting the Sony IMX800 sensor. But unfortunately, that is not the case. The main camera here is a Sony IMX800. Still a pretty capable sensor, but nowhere close to the IMX989. But so far, only after 3 hours of shooting, the main camera is still pretty good for a foldable phone. But I do think it suffers from exposure a little bit compared to the Fold 5. But this is early days in software, so hopefully Xiaomi can fix that, because I've been daily driving the Xiaomi 13 Ultra, and this is my favorite camera phone right now. The ultra-wide camera appears to be the exact same ultra-wide camera as in the Mix Fold 2. It is a 13 megapixel ultra-wide. I'm also happy to report that the apertures of all 4 of these cameras are relatively fast, so that means the cameras can take in a little bit more light. 3 of the 4 cameras have OIS. So the only camera with the OIS is the ultra-wide camera. That's the lens that don't really need stabilization because you're shooting wide. So the fact that the 2 zoom lenses have OIS, it's very awesome for a foldable phone. The processor in the Mix Fold 3 is the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, but it's the same overclocked chip that's in the Galaxy Z Fold 5 and the S23 Ultra. So that Snapdragon for Galaxy branding is just branding. The exact same chip is in the Mix Fold 3. So in terms of software, I'm unfortunate to report, and I hope this could be fixed down the line, that a lot of the software gripes that I have with the Xiaomi Mix Fold 2 is still here. And most of that just because this phone is only selling in China for now, so it's running a China ROM. So Google apps are not optimized for this. For example, if you want to split screen YouTube, you can only still split it vertically, not horizontally. Gboard still does not give you a split keyboard. So it seems like Gboard will only split for phones that are international ROM, like the Honor Magic VS actually has a split Gboard, but then all my Chinese photables like the Oppo Find N or the Xiaomi Mix Fold 2 and 3, the Gboard will not split. So that's unfortunate because when you're typing on a larger, wider 8-inch screen, you want to have a split keyboard. So unfortunately, those lack of optimization that was in the Mix Fold 2 still appears to be here. And this is why when I reviewed the Fold 5, I say that even though the Fold 5's hardware doesn't impress me at all, the software is so well optimized. Like YouTube, you can split it horizontal or vertical. You can run any apps and it will show up in the right aspect ratio, and the keyboard will split. So if you are someone who cares a lot about software, the Fold 5 is still a little bit more polished. But I'm willing to give Xiaomi a little bit more time to fix this. Or maybe if this phone will release globally, then the global version of MIUI will probably be a lot more optimized for Google apps. Okay, now let's look at the camera. So I've done some preliminary camera shooting. Now keep in mind, I've only had this phone for 3 hours, so this is not an in-depth camera test at all. But I've done some quick comparison between the Mix Fold 3 and the Mix Fold 2. Definitely the Mix Fold 3 just has a much better zoom lens. You can see the difference whenever you zoom beyond like 3x, the Mix Fold 3 photo is just much better. I also compare against the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. Now obviously the Mix Fold 3's camera is not going to beat the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. So the key is to see how close the Mix Fold 3 can get to Xiaomi's best slap phone. I'm happy to report that in terms of the zoom lenses, the Mix Fold 3 is keeping up with the Xiaomi 13 Ultra very well. However, the main camera falls short to the Sony IMX800 here. And like I said, the Mix Fold 3 right now is still overexposing main camera photos. And obviously, the depth of field and details are not quite on par with the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. I guess a better question to ask is, how does this camera compare to the Z Fold 5? So far, the Z Fold 5's main camera is doing a better job than the Mix Fold 3, particularly in exposure. But in terms of zoom lenses, I like that the Mix Fold 3 gives me more depth of field. For example, in this 10x zoom image, you can see there's a little bit more depth of field behind Mickey in the Mix Fold 3 image than on the Fold 5. The Fold 5 image just looks a little bit flatter. So both of these are telephoto zoom shots, and you can see again the Mix Fold 3's image has a little bit more depth right behind the globe. Particularly when I'm shooting videos right here. Like, look at these two videos side by side. So now you're watching video footage with both the Mix Fold 3 and the Galaxy Z Fold 5. So the Z Fold 5, I'm going to jump into the telephoto zoom lens 3x, and I'm going to do the 3.2x, which is the telephoto with the Xiaomi. And you can see that there's a pretty good subject separation for both phones, but there's a little bit more so in the Xiaomi. You see, the difference between the statue of this naked lady and the building behind her. You see a little bit of that parallax effect when I move in and out. There's separation. If I go further, let's go up to 6x with the Fold 5, and we'll go up to 6x with the Xiaomi too, and you see same thing. It's a little bit more detail in the Xiaomi, and there's a little bit more bokeh separation between the statue and the background behind her. And if I move a little bit, you see, look at the light pole behind. The light pole just seems, there's a little bit more depth in Xiaomi's video footage than in the Fold 5. But like I said, this is still early days of it now because I've only been able to test the cameras during the daytime. And as we know, nighttime is a more important test of how good a camera system is. So unfortunately for this video, I can't wait till nighttime because I wanted to get this up at embargo. But I'm going to have a follow-up video on this very soon, including more nighttime samples and photography. Whatever you want me to test, please leave a comment and let me know, and I will try my best to do it. And I'm also going to be putting my SIM card in this phone to use as my daily driver, and I will have a full review of this phone coming hopefully in like a week. In the meantime, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to my channel. It will help me a lot. And this phone, it's pretty affordable in China. Obviously, it starts at 8,999 Chinese yuan, which converts to about $1,250 US. So that means even if you want to import this phone, let's say you pay like a $300 markup, you can still import this phone for about $1,500 US. So it's still a cheaper device than the Fold 5. But hopefully Xiaomi will consider releasing this globally, because I really want a global ROM for this phone, because China ROM ultimately just has these little missing things that just kind of annoy me. Come on, Xiaomi, release this globally, yeah? So yeah, that's it for now. Thanks for watching.